All right, we are back.
This time, baby, I'm gonna be bulletproof.
Holy.
I mean, so we had this problem just now. Sorry for those of us who are just joining. Basically, the last stream had all these glitches, so we started the stream over. But we're back. This is Real Science. BurnEye, thank you for putting this together. Without you, we would be nothing and spread apart like the pieces of, what's his name? You know, from Braveheart.
Wallace?
William Wallace. Were they like torn
apart?
Yeah,
Mr.
that's how
Gibson.
we
are. The audio is amazing this time.
William Wallace. Braveheart's such a horrible reference.
No, because like we would be that way, but we're not that way. That's how we would be if we're torn apart.
Man. Henry William Wallace is the name of an inventor who had worked exclusively on a gravity generator. So it's just
that's what
funny.
Braveheart's really about, and nobody will tell you. But read between the lines. It's anti-gravity, the whole movie. I don't know.
No,
right.
I meant without BurnEye, we'd be William Wallace. We'd be cold and Scottish, but together we're like the Power Ranger Zorg, and that's what we're really more.
That or the Brady Bunch. I mean,
yeah, the brothers Charisma.
All I'm saying is Mel Gibson apparently had some issue with Robert the Bruce because like none of that is real at all. Like William Wallace is true; he was a knight and he did get ripped apart, but that's what started Robert the Bruce's rebellion, which is what overthrew the King of England. Like,
right.
And he was nasty about it.
Yeah, is there a good Robert the Bruce movie? Can you think of one?
Wallace has got it out for the Scots. That's why.
I don't know if it's a good movie, but that one with the guy from the Star Trek reboot film series,
really,
Outlaw King or something like that. I could have sworn that was about Robert the Bruce uprising. You know, after the King of England took over.
Outlaw King.
Outlaw King, I think, is what it's called.
Sounds
nice.
The Outlaw King.
Yeah, that's so that with more Power Rangers because of BurnEye is my point. Also, just because I forgot to do it, let me introduce that we have a few people here that you might not be familiar with. For instance, Benjamin Balderson. You weren't on the beginning of the stream, but you're here now. I'm super glad that you made it. It's awesome that you're here. You've been doing some amazing stuff on your channel, so we're grateful that you're here. Also, Frankie Limbeau. What's up, buddy? How are you? You were talking with me a minute ago about electrodentistry, so hopefully you can bring up some stuff like that again.
I'm super stoked to talk to you.
Dude, glad you're here, man. And then Amoro was not here, and he just joined us as well. So welcome back, Nathan. It's been far too long. How are you doing?
Good to be back. Life is busy. Just a real quick shout out to my future son.
Oh yeah,
I have another baby on the way.
Oh my god!
Congratulations,
dude. That's the best because you want him to be able to dig the holes together in the backyard. You know?
Hey, who's gonna carry on the good work?
Yeah, you gotta have two. Well, you know, also, yeah, just like maybe you never know because it's always the girl who wants to become the firefighter. You know.
Hey, that's why I had a girl first.
You know, and then Simon, glad you're back. What's up, Simon? How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing good.
And then Terran Earthling, you're also with us. Liminal and Exotic Propulsion in the house.
Yo.
who wants to do an algo experiment now that we're officially like 4 minutes and 3 seconds in, right?
Guys, this guy, he just can't stop himself. He's just ready to
glitch out.
Get me in the lab.
Okay, what is the first element on the periodic table?
Hydrogen.
Hydrogen.
Oh, okay. Everybody's
Is
still.
This a trick question?
Okay, is the stream still running? Yeah.
I think I'll just run it here. Yeah,
Okay.
HHO generator, water vortex, hydrogen generator, hydroxy gas, Brown's gas, exotic vacuum objects. Is everybody rolling now?
I feel like
do we
we're
still
alive.
have a
I think
signal,
we're still
people?
alive.
Yeah.
Please post one in the chat.
So if you're able to still hear us and they haven't cut the stream, hydrogen time.
Hooray, we made it through the second time.
Water car.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, water car.
Yeah, water
Stanley
car.
Meyer.
Hydrogen from water. Stanley Meyer.
Made on demand, not compressed.
Run your engine. Run your engine. Nice. Run your engine directly off water. That's right. Water generators.
Yeah, I mean, which is like the plot of every major movie ever. Like Disney had things like the Shaggy Dog. Don't they have like a car that runs off of grass and water? But also, I think my mom told me that she met in, was it Vienna in the 70s, a scientist working for Deutsche Ford who invented a hydrogen car engine, and the dude ended up getting killed. So there's
Right?
and then there's the Myers thing, which is already, so that's 3 or 4 examples in. So, and this is all before the 80s. So
Oh, good heavens, there are so many more.
And there's been some more recent ones, too.
Hydroxy martyrs. Man, it's one after the other.
So,
try to say we have something that will threaten the oil industry, you're dead.
Well, so then what's been going on? It sounds like it's been secretly people have been building these things privately, or there are companies that just need to have hydrogen cars for themselves that they don't sell.
Incidentally,
for
Toyota just
You
announced
can
that
get
they're going to be
add-ons
making
for like semi trucks at this point.
hydrogen
People just don't know
combustion
about it.
engines.
Right?
Wait a second. Wait, Simon, you're
Yeah,
talking about Toyota hydrogen combustion engines off stock, though? When's this going to come out?
Oh, I mean, I'm just some person who reads it on the internet, right?
That's
So-
not the same as like liquid fuel cell. We're not talking about the hydrogen.
No,
fuel
no,
cell from
combustion
Mustang.
engines.
Okay.
So it's much more similar to what people are driving right now. Yeah.
I heard they had to mix it with NOS though, in order for it to burn properly.
I'm not sure about the specifics, but
Gotta go turbo.
it would be really, really shitty if they murdered a whole bunch of independent, inventors who worked on this just so that a major corporation could, take over the entire industry, right? But that would never happen.
That's the fact, though.
That's not what the Seven Sister Oil Cartel has been doing for the last 60 years. No. Uh-oh. Oh, Xirtus, are you muted, or did they actually jank us?
Did you
again?
guys get a freezing thing just now? Is it okay?
Momentarily? We can see you now, and we can hear you again.
I had a glitch there that worried me. Okay. Well, so wait, exotic propulsion. Were you about to show us an experiment?
No, the experiment was to see if we get kicked off by listing all the
okay.
terms that seem to generally
Sorry.
get a tick
I
off.
thought you might have like another plan there.
Oh, I do have experiments, but I wasn't set up to run them right now. I decided to take some time with you folks and do this live stream instead of finishing up what I'm building over there. But I am going to get to that tonight.
Very
We
well.
do appreciate your time. Yeah, I didn't relaunch it on Rumble. We're only on the YouTubes and Twitch and Twitter right now, I guess. But on everybody's YouTubes, and it seems to still be working. Benjamin, did you ever test out your little hydrogen reactor you made? And
I have not.
you have
The
not.
weather kicked my ass, and then the pseudo spring is kicking my ass. Like all the animals are popping out babies, but have spring, and we're trying to recover from everything else. And I've just been running and I got sick for a month.
That will do it.
Yeah.
That will set it. Set you back, but that's what we gotta do and get going. What?
And yeah, just the weird, I think maybe, and it might have even been the weird wet spring been part of it. It just snowed here like a week ago. Like it's such a strange year. And in 4 months, we went from Mount Shasta, the largest reservoir in Northern California, being down to a literal creek. It wasn't even a river anymore. And that thing's full again. And that's a 500-foot deep reservoir, and it's giant.
Like it was, you guys were in a drought, like a 10-year drought, and now everything has refilled and you're flooding. Ooh, we got
flooding,
Sean.
and the snowpack hasn't even started melting yet. It's still freezing. It's still freezing here in California.
All right, sorry, I had to jump around a little bit here. Okay, you thought I'd present some patents. It's too bad we lost Mike earlier because he was spitting out everything about these patents. So
he had to go. It was late for him, and he has to work.
yeah. So this is pretty much ultrasonic pond fogger in the bottom there, and you put a little bit of gasoline in here, and this will create little vortex rings, or what's starting as EVOs, and you electrostatically charge them in here, and they come out, and they go into the engine, and the compression from what Mike was talking about, it would create an explosion. And you couldn't use a normal flame with it. So like from the gas, yeah, that's all I have right there for that. This is Jenkins'
And
patent.
Mike keeps talking about.
What was that?
Mike keeps talking about the piezoelectricity, and that if you hook up a like a resonant coil, it resonates just because you hooked it up to the piezoelectric. He's amplifying it. It seems that if you hook up a piezoelectric crystal in or a speaker or whatever, or like let's say one of these things, it's a transducer. It seems to resonate the coil automatically and amplify it. And Jared is talking about this also, and he's talking about putting it inside of a pyramid with the geopolymer stuff, right? And so maybe I'm going way off track here. Sorry, I'm kind of high.
Well, not really. I mean, talking about piezoelectrics, what we were just looking at up above is a water pond fogger. They operate between 1.3 meg to about 1.7 megahertz. And unlike your normal atomizers that also are piezoelectric, and you can tell the difference because those ones will have a ring of piezoelectric element, and then in the center there'll be a tiny little rough-looking surface on this stainless steel disc and be perforated. So that runs around 130 kilohertz, and it produces water mist, but that is way different than water vapor, which is what we get at 1.3 megahertz range. You can actually see, if you ever looked at one of these pond foggers as it operates, you'll see it pushing up a stream of water above the surface, and then vapor will be coming directly off that stream above the water surface. And so if there's a charge present, whereas these tiny little molecules of water are physically breaking away from the adhesion of the surface tension because they're being vibrated at 1.3 million cycles per second, electrons can grab onto those things and immediately charge them, which will cause them to repel from each other. But because they're actually being spun up as they're leaving that mist stream, they'll grab onto more electrons, and an electron cluster is effectively what we call an exotic vacuum object. So those will contain a much higher amount of energy than just that combustible amount of mist alone. And once it's at that high energy state, the electrons have to be sourced from somewhere, so they'll get ripped off of water molecules, which will cause them to destabilize and release the hydrogen and oxygen separately, both in ionic form, which can be moved around by the high voltage.
What do you mean moved
Beautiful
around
thing
by the high
about a
voltage?
system like this.
What's that?
What do you mean moved around by the high voltage?
I mean, when you have charged particles, if you have an ionized hydrogen where it's lacking an electron, it's going to move around pretty easy, being attracted to a negative terminal, a negative high voltage charge, and repelled away from a positive high voltage charge. And if you have oxygen and it's got an extra electron, because it's easily ionizable negatively, it's going to be pushed away from the negative terminal and move towards the positive terminal. So it's basically easy to control the flow of these ionized gases that have collected charges. And by making exotic vacuum objects, you're giving yourself a great advantage of ionizing the various gases inside there, including taking apart the water molecule.
So you can control how they, let's say they are a fuel, right? You can control how the fuel is dispersed, right?
Yeah, absolutely you can.
Yeah, perfect. That's what I was asking. Sorry.
The good thing about a system
it's
like
interesting.
this is the degradation doesn't naturally occur when you have this ionization process. Deionized water breaks any bonds to metals and minerals and other chemicals that water picks up as it goes. And so when you ionize the water, it doesn't bond to anything. So it's not going to leach or strip from the internals of your engine, be it plastic or any type of metal. That's why these things work so well.
That's actually an amazing point.
Yeah, when we ran the experiment and we added charge to the basin, we were easily able to steer it around just with a piece of high voltage wire and exposed stuck to a wooden pole, and just change the beam path of the stream. You could cause it to disperse, or you could cause it to constrict if you put it through, say, like a piece of PVC that had aluminum tape around the outside just to create the electric field. It would squeeze it into the center, sort of like a particle trap. But you can definitely steer it that way too. That's how it's done prior to entering the particle accelerators. It's just accelerated by electric fields.
So this is the voltage intensifying circuit. This is a transformer. It's with a switching diode. Jeremiah and I were studying one day, and we found out that the core of this is actually very thin.
So what his goal here is to saturate the core. That's why it's not made of a large amount of metal. He actually wants that saturation effect to take place. The BH curve of all your metallic or your ferrous metals for transformer cores are going to be nonlinear in their response. They'll have a BH curve or a hysteresis curve. And if you time the usage of the power right, which you can see he's got switches on various parts of this thing in order to control when he's putting power into it and when he's drawing the power back out of it, he's able to utilize that hysteresis curve to his advantage.
Yeah, and in between here, you put in the capacitor, which is right here. You had, and water would come through here, and it would separate, and then up here would be the electron extraction grid, which would starve the water or the hydrogen gas of electrons,
Positively ionizing it, right?
Yeah. And what else this would do it would energize the bulbs that ran inside the I'm pretty sure it's up here. Yeah, right here. The around. Yeah, so right here are the diodes, right? And they would charge that so that it would produce the light that would help rip apart the molecule, because when this light hit the diode light, it would hit these, it would jump orbitals and help allow the electrons to be extracted through this high voltage process. This also,
can any of you,
his claim was also that this would decrease this would convert the amperage into voltage. So you would see like a hyperbolic curve of gas being created and the voltage intensifying. So he called it an intensifying circuit.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, no worries.
Did you guys talk about Vimanas?
Yep. There's a lot about Vimanas, but I haven't read much of that
Mercury vortexes. So there's a bunch of descriptions on counter-rotating Mercury vortexes, sort of like the hydrodynamic drive thing I was talking about with the I made a very simple one, but there's actually plans on how to make it in the Hindu scripts, and
yeah,
it's
the problem
counter-rotating Mercury, like spinning. It's exactly what I was doing. It makes me wonder if you're spinning water in this device, it's going to cause hydrogen and oxygen to separate, right? So what's that going to do to Mercury? And well, I'm not even a brainiac like you guys, by the way. I'm an amateur, you know. So I'm asking you guys. I'm asking you humbly. Is what I'm saying.
The thing is that the safety profile of anything that uses mercury is just abysmal. Like, I imagine a car that crashes, and instead of catching fire, it makes everything within a mile radius just
also
toxic.
The Gita and in the in the Veda in the Sastri or whatever, when it talks about the Vimanas, it talks about the pilots, and it says like they need to have like the definition of the pilot of a Vimana is someone who knows the 32 secrets of the working Vimana. So it's kind of also on top of it that, but then there's a question also about what the numbers are about, because there's 19 processes. I think that's also like there's 7, 5, 19, 25. There's certain numbers that they use that I think have to do a lot with magnetism or like two polar sets of magnets as well. And then, Mercury has to do with like there's a fluid that's going with the gyroscopic motion. And that's the same thing that's in the what's that called? Like the flying disc technology from the early 20th century.
The ARV. Are you talking about Mark McCandlich's story?
Haibu.
Yeah.
Hold on, give me a second to think about
Haibu, Victor Schauberger stuff.
it.
Like
Are you talking about the D-Glock?
Oh, the Foo Fighters, maybe.
UFO origin or like no
Glocken.
Saucer origin. No, it's American guy. No, Dutch American guy. Over here. The
Victor Schauberger. No? His stuff?
No. This is an American guy who I think he might have been like from like the Dutch East Indies or something like that.
Oppenheimer.
No, he's
not
I'm kidding.
An electrogravitic.
If this was 20 guesses, we would have lost already.
Yeah.
That's what gets me more and more intrigued.
And so they also like not just HHO comes through here. Like you can use this gas gun for argon, so you're starving argon, and this is what he used for his electrical particle generator, because he was able to covalently bond unlike atoms with this method. So the next part is right here. So the gas would come into this chamber, and right here would be little sparking pins of iron, nickel, and cobalt. Or, if you had HHO vapor, maybe like gold and silver or something. And you could, it would create a spark, and then they would cling to the gas because the gas was starving, and these would, they having the free electrons and stuff, they would cling on to the gas, and then the gas would come through here, which is like a speaker magnet by the looks of it, right? And then it would then pull and realign the molecules and magnetize them. So now he has a magnetic argon gas, and argon is, as he stated, electromagnetic shunt and also a lubricant. So when it runs through the system, it's a non-magnetic pipe that you have. So he claimed that you could use like copper, right? Because it's not magnetic, and it would act as like if you had a laser light in there, it would act as
it's a photonic.
Pretty much it acts as like a light tube, and it would amplify the magnetic field. He was saying. So here's his other methods. Like there's a paddle running this gas through, right, into a coil. I'm gonna put that other way around now. Yeah. Through other coils and stuff, and just keep rotating the gas. But he claimed the laser light was the best method. He said he called it the Star Wars like
interesting
type technology.
So the dude I was thinking earlier was Alexander.
Saying that as many times as the light went around.
The guy I was thinking earlier was Alexander Vega.
So what's the story with Alexander? Never heard of this guy.
I'm sorry. You can finish what you were showing. I'll show you in a second. I just figured his name out.
Okay, so like he claimed that when the laser light went around, it would like these molecules would create a field, and every time the light went around, it just get bigger and bigger and bigger. It's like it's almost like the super magnetism that's needed for like fusion and stuff could be possibly done like maybe with this method. But he also told like he put in obviously an accelerator here to accelerate it, and then when it took the charge off, it'd come back, and then when it went through, it'd charge up again because it's a magnetic gas, right?
Right. Or it could be pneumatic fluids, like if it was mercury.
Yeah, and like this was like a gas that was just bonded together. Like it's argon and nickel, cobalt, and iron. And it's covalently bonded together. and it's like I said, electromagnetic shunt and argon is, and yeah. Okay, so next quick part. Yeah, so there it is in this dealership manual that here's the gas accelerator, there's the pickup coil.
Nice.
That's how an MRI machine works.
Yeah, this is like all Star Trek kind of stuff, really. All right, let's get to how he made like a motor, like oh, sorry, this is not it, but this was actually pretty fascinating. So what he did here was he has obviously electrolysis going on. He has the magnetizers, and I forgot to mention in the Canadian patents, he mentions that the classified technology was unclassified for all the Canadian patents, but classified for the American ones. So if you want to know where all the secret sauce is, you have to go through the Canadian patents. And because the electrical particle generator I showed you is legal in Canada because it was legalized right through the patent office, but there's no patent for you guys, for you Americans. So like it's kind of draws that thin line, right? So anyways, the field, as you see, it causes to be magnetic, just the water particles, I guess. And from what I'm understanding, I'm not too sure if it's just becoming electron donators or I'm not too sure, but he claims that when you wrap a coil around it, you could get electricity from this just through the pipe of the water fuel. And then he ignites it, and then also he has something to recycle.
I've actually seen a few older models of these where they were collecting electricity off of the water pipes.
Well, I don't know if everybody in the audience has been following Bob Greenier's coverage of the wind hex, but there's a small scale test model that somebody made where they were just spinning steam around inside of this cavity, which is basically a cylinder with a cone stuck to it. And it was generating a measurable electric field around it. And it's just spinning steam.
Let me just quickly show you guys, because earlier I mentioned this guy from the Dutch East Indies, and apparently it really does exist. I wasn't just forgetting or making it up in my mind. But KB also mentioned, she's like, discopter guy, and that's what it is. Alexander Vegers, born in Mojokerto, Dutch East Indies, with his Dutch parents. They owned a sugar plantation and hotel. His mother taught literature in several languages. Inherited his mother's linguistic talents. He studied a lot of Indonesian history and got into philosophy and mechanical engineering and aerospace engineering. And then he invented the discopter. And so the discopter is his dream, right? He wanted everyone to have discopters. He wanted people to live in discopters. He wanted people to fly discopters from their discopters to their discopter. It was just the whole future was going to be inside these gyroscopic crafts.
Oh man, I love when someone has a huge dream like that. That's fantastic.
Right? Look how big this dream was. He's like, yeah, and it's gonna look like Atlantis, and then they're just gonna plug in, and they'll fly the whole city away.
Yeah, that looks exactly like anime that I watched as a kid. I'm not even joking.
It's gonna happen. And also, this is the Venus Project. This is Epcot. This is a lot of plans kind of look like this.
We'll just have,
yeah. But it's interesting that he came from the Dutch East Indies because of just the idea of the Indonesian bell. I mean, you guys kept mentioning Glocken, they're Glocken. So that comes up. But he also didn't just design these nice looking crafts. He had access to technology. He was interested in designing actual ionic lifting technology. And so, he was just restricted because of finances, really, which he poured everything he had into this. And then they just kind of took it from him.
Yeah. Story of all the grades.
Story of my life.
What year was that from, Andres?
Oh, gosh. Let's see.
Man, that's cool.
He was born in 1889, as often people are. and no, 1901, and then he died in 1989. So his discopter 37, I think.
Okay. You said they took it all away from him, or are you referring to the government?
So he received a patent for his discopter in 1944 because he could prove how it worked and everything, and that served as a prototype for other similar hovering aircrafts that have been developed for the present day. So they kind of, once they knew how it worked. So by 44, it was like, oh.
Do you recall the guy that was in the African desert building a huge solar-powered machine out of a bunch of metal? Self-made man, like turn of the 20th century, like around World War I. He was building this huge like metal plate collector for solar energy, and then World War I popped up, and they came in and took all of his life's work, his savings that he put into building this project, because they needed the metal to, build things that kill people.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the story of everyone's life. Like someone who tried to invent.
Yeah, it was all his own money. Self-made man, could have been a very different course in how we're running our systems, but instead it's not solar power, not as much as it could be.
Sean, well, everyone is talking. Could you look this up? Let's take a look at this because he's posted this several times. And
about these guys?
To see what this
and that's.
Oh, yeah, is it? Okay,
that's
absolutely awesome. Then I did not recognize the number. That patent is awesome, and so is its counterpart, the magnetic vortex wormhole generator. I built one of those.
Isn't that the patent that was posted right before the previous stream crashed?
That was the marker that I used to tell when the stream crashed. I have no idea what it actually crashed.
The requirement's new metal, right? I believe you said.
Yeah, it has to be. He's a Magnetics Incorporated perm alloy, and it has a very, very sharp change or transient in the hysteresis curve, which he uses to generate an ultra-fast current transient in terms of amps per meter in the bucking field fluxes between the internal radii coil and the external radii coil. They're 1/3 ratio. So the inside coil is the toroid, and it's 1/3 the diameter of the outside toroid, but they're both the same height, if you will. That is 2-inch strip. Anyways, Magnetics Incorporated would not sell that stuff to me, and I needed a lot of it. I tried to use other types of metals that are supposed to be particularly good for that, but again, they didn't have that same ultra-sharp hysteresis curve. So if I can find something that does respond quickly enough magnetically when it hits the saturation point, then I'll be able to complete that test.
Is there a reason they wouldn't sell it to you, or
was someone pulling up?
They said they only sell to commercial accounts, and there is a minimum amount, and they'll only sell it to you by the huge spool.
Of course.
All right.
I love those drawings of the Sonero Aero Club.
Right, looking at NIMSA, you can kind of see that they had a lot of thoughts about the technology. Well, the Sonora Air Club was...
Bodley's work was cool.
The magazine that was sharing the NIMSA stuff. So the idea that they were decades, centuries ahead on using nickel, cobalt, gallium, pressure, mercury, pneumatics, creating electromagnetic polarity while they had lift in order to lean direction. I mean...
Oh, and what kind of gas would one use to make a lighter than air craft like that? Just out of curiosity.
Did you say nickel, cobalt, and gallium?
Right. Nickel, cobalt, and gallium.
Yeah, definitely helium, right? Definitely helium.
That'd be like a magnetoacoustic type of shaping.
Hydrogen balloons. Okay, you can say hydrogen balloon, right? Is there a problem with that? Yeah, we could talk about the gas balloon a bit and how it's different than just like an air balloon. Because you also could just have hot air balloon like that displaces air. But the use of gas balloons has been rumored to be dangerous ever since the propaganda film about the Hindenburg, right? The diesel engines. The diesel engines exploded. But you'll find balloons that existed before the Napoleonic Wars. So the question of how far back do gas balloons go? Montgolfier brothers.
I mean, that's actually what we still call it in French. All hot air balloons are still called Montgolfier.
Gosh, you guys with your Band-Aid branding, like it's a medical adhesive strip, you know?
I've seen balloons. I think balloons are older than that, just like electricity.
Well, I mean, in fairness,
balloons
at least
have
it's
been
the
around
name
for
of the
hundreds and
inventor.
hundreds of years. They go back really far.
Oh, they claim 1783.
French balloons. There's no balloons like French balloons.
Are we talking like able to lift a human or just, lifting into the sky? The Chinese were doing stuff.
I just feel like even
thousands of
looking
years
at
ago.
the French balloon, you have to imagine they're basing this on Sumerian balloons. Like, look at the art on it.
Right. I mean, it has to go back farther than the 1700s, I'm thinking, but no recordings in history that I've been able to find.
Yeah, but there's also read between the lines. Like when you look into the Silk Road in Peru, there's balloons in Peru, and the Silk Road might have been used more by balloons than by traversing nomadically by foot.
Yeah.
How else do you draw the Nazca lines, right?
And this guy with his hand in his pocket. Oh, Montgolfier. How could you?
Good point.
He's got both his hands in his pocket. It must have been cold that day. Maybe it was the year without a summer.
He's double Illuminati confirmed. No hand naughty, I guess.
No hand naughty.
Yeah, I recognizing the gestures, eh?
Look at that jet.
This could have been us, but you playing.
That
right?
is so Jetson.
We need that.
This is Wisconsin in a parallel reality.
No way. No.
The technological center of the continental U.S.
Wait, is this drawing? Did it say
Republican Jesus
placed in
can-
Wisconsin? That would be hilarious.
Damn you, C-137 universe! We were supposed to have these, right? All of our parents were promised
I
these.
want my Jetsons craft already.
You can tell because of the dog and the lack of mountains.
Don't they
And I
have
work
those
hard
like
every day to bring these to you.
they
Yeah, but
have
it's an
those
older model. You can tell by the headlights.
Yeah.
they got the drone copters that can carry people, right? Those like really large ones.
Screw
been done.
drone copters. We need.
Well, there's that guy who made the
electromagnetic.
quadcopter that you can stand on, just flies
Right.
around.
Yeah. It's definitely different from your average helicopter.
Look at these schematics. There's so much more to them than just like there's physics included in those. Like, it's
Only I
just
could read that
too
fancy
detailed
writing.
not to have more in it.
That's the same reason that Vimanika Shastra captivated physicists, because there was so much technical information in a very non-technical type of book from a time that was way before that stuff should have been known. I mean, concepts like electromagnets and mercury boilers and, MHD, electrical capture. Like, why is that all that stuff is in there? It's in there in the instructions. And they tell you, yes, the mercury boiler must be made strong of iron, and give you all kinds of descriptions of how you're supposed to build this thing so that it won't destroy itself.
Plus the pulp futurism of the 30s, 40s, 50s. I mean, they had all of these ideas from popular mechanics, and they knew what was possible. And that's the real future. That's what could exist, but it's all being kept from us. Look at these flying cars that look like birds. What is even going on?
It's more like
here?
a manta ray.
Manta rays. Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
too
so
rotten.
the human sized drones, they're calling them passenger drones also.
I love the 50s futurism and just the idea of what corporatism could bring us. So like, look, see, in the future, you won't even have to drive your car. It'll just take you places. It'll be like an automatic limousine. So you'll be busy. You'll have to play games.
I like this one because you actually drive on the line instead of between the lines. So
Right.
people could hypothetically actually do it.
Well, those lines are powering your car. So that's the other thing. So you don't-
that's another way of doing it.
Yeah, the roads move you. You pay for a subscription to the road, probably, or tax to have access to it.
You're only allowed 15 minutes of travel time.
Full 15 minutes.
As much as you can pay for.
Well, that thing better be fast then.
This
Like
stuff
Mach
exists
3.
now, right? This is your taco trucks
Well,
now.
there's a brand out there I thought called Jetson One that are making, human carrying vehicles.
It's still
Yeah.
Yeah, I
drones.
studied that.
Yeah.
It's an H frame, double propeller, one on top, on the bottom, for each arm. So it has 4 arms, and then you have 2 joysticks, and then you throttle up and down, and then you know, it's a pretty cool looking thing.
For my
tank
research,
controls.
the Jetson 1 is like super intuitive to fly. I guess they designed it in such a way that almost anyone can get into it, and within probably 10 minutes or so, they're able to operate that thing, and it's somehow very kinematically intuitive to the body.
There's other manufacturers too that are carrying more than one person. You just haven't really seen them yet. They've kind of demoed them in some sci-fi shows, but they're out there. They're making them right now. They're just not in popular use.
Well, honestly, the big restriction for air taxis is still federal regulations here in the States, at least, and I'm imagining for most civilized countries that's a major issue, because where do how do you get these things from A to B? How do you deal with the regulations of having to fly over populated areas, which is inevitable if you're talking about an air taxi, right? So they have not figured out how to implement all this stuff whilst guaranteeing that if one of these things blows a prop or has a battery issue, that it doesn't come crashing down in someone's yard.
Yeah,
or worse.
Frankly, I look at this, and the first thing that comes to mind is they're going to mount an M2 to that thing, and it's going to, be another weapon. I
would not want to be in one of those on the battlefield with bullets flying at me. One prop hit, and you're done. Come on, it's a terrible idea.
It's not robust. It's totally exposed.
I mean, like, you take the human out, obviously.
How much shielding would you have to carry with you, though, just to protect your props?
They just got some clout right now because of the name, but I don't know, where they're going with it. I've seen better models.
Should I continue on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So, this patent here, it's the same one. They're showing in more detail that you can have DC pickup coils with AC pickup coils. And from what I actually understand from the one up here, I believe, I'm not too sure, but I believe that because they grounded this, only the hydrogen's going out here. And then the oxygen is getting recirculated into the fuel cell, the wet cell, so that, like, I'm assuming, so that when it runs out, it doesn't, like, implode in any way, or because it's not being sucked out. So I think it's only hydrogen that's coming out here, because it says in the patent it's a gas electrical hydrogen generator. So I'm assuming it's only hydrogen that he's trying to get out of this, which is fascinating. Anyways, so here is he's explaining for like a gasoline engine for a lawnmower. He has the HHO going up, it's going through the tube, getting air, exploding, and then the vapor he's recycling back into the system so that it burns at the same rate as natural gas. And that way it doesn't burn too hot, so you can just easily retrofit it onto a regular engine. Here he has resonant generators, so like Helmholtz type systems, where he where is that? Right there. So like you charge here, water comes in, spark it, negative on the outside, I'm assuming. And that's that. That's all I have.
It's hard to
right
look
now.
at all this stuff, right, Sean? It's hard to look at all this stuff it's hard to look at all this stuff and just confuse it with simple electrolysis methods. Everything about this is entirely different than electrolysis. And it seems that some people still can't get it through their heads that this is more than putting a differential DC potential across two electrodes.
Yeah, this is that transformer, that saturation transformer. Well, here's regular electrolysis, but this is I just threw this in because it's a separator cell. They call it a dry cell. Realistically, it's not. Yeah, so like all it is there's a membrane in between. So the membrane, people use silkscreen, the nylon silkscreen, and they also use, which I heard was a really good method, was a sheet of 3 mil Teflon, sheet of that in between. That way there's less chance of the oxygen and the hydrogen combining. So if you wanted to separate and store it in low pressure, the propane tanks, if you get low carbon propane tanks, you can store it that way at low pressure. You just need a lot of tanks. And yeah, that is that. Anybody else?
I'm just wondering how I'm going to share this thing. If I can share this thing, maybe I can pull up this patent. I guess I'll have to select it and come back. Give me just a second. I got to pull up the patent.
I'd say keep going on. I was loving every minute of that, Sean. And just the difference, if you could go in a little bit more detail between the electrolysis hydrogen styles compared to this oversaturation method.
Okay, hold on. Yeah, sure. I just have to re-allow my share screen. And so the transformer, let's see if I can find this again. I don't have all my notes are all messy. That's on it. Yeah, another fancy Dan for people. Most Canadian patents that are like, fancy and like Thomas Townsend Brown and this, they get this umbrella looking stamp in the corner. I call it the umbrella stamp because it looks like the Umbrella Corporation stamp.
Okay, I'm glad you pointed that out. That's for the Canadian ones?
Yeah.
I've noticed stuff like this going back through history on other ones.
Yeah, I've seen a star. I've seen this. I've seen a couple other weird ones, but like Thomas Townsend Brown and Stanley Meyer have this stamp, so I'm assuming it's like.
So that's the stamp of the one they don't want getting out. Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, this is it. Sorry. So yeah, this is the voltage intensifying circuit, like I explained earlier. This is where.
Oh, sorry.
Go
ahead, Sean. I've got to reselect you over here.
Okay.
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go. You see it.
Yeah, there's like the pulse pickup coil comes through here, so that's what he's pulsing at. The switching dial comes here, goes through the resonant choke here, and the primary coil's right here, and of course circulates. And what happens, from what I understand, is that the amperage, because of the switching diode, is flipped around. So I'm not exactly too sure, because we learned about the saturation, and the saturation point, actually, I believe it's in here. Hold on, let me see if I can find it. I'm pretty sure.
I didn't realize he showed that in his graph. That'd be great.
Yeah. I'm not too sure if it was the old manual or the new one. Both old, but like one was 1986 when I was just a gleam in my father's eye.
$1986, eh?
Oh, yeah. Hold on. I mean, I have to skim through faster here. Yeah. So that was the way method of having it run in a furnace. Oh, he's talking about how he's making down here. He's talking about how he made with having his system, he was able to get water vapor into the gas, and it would burn at like how natural gas would burn. But he did other methods too to it. Like in the combustion phase, he would like to take in oxygen with O3 and and excited oxygen as well for the combustion phase. Let's see here. Where is? I don't think it's in this one right here. I think. Damn it. Oh, there it is. Right there. So he's talking about through here, like through his ones, through all this, a voltage intensifying circuit. The saturation point, like remember how Jeremian was showing you, like the guy was showing the exact effect with the pulse train he was putting in. It was kind of like building up and then it would drop. Yeah, I wish I could get that. Wish I could get that video. It was on. Oh darn! It's on this place where you could buy all the boards and all the stuff and do it yourself. But yeah, anyway, so here's the applied voltage to the resonant cavity, and it just shows that it steps up and then it drops, and that's due to the design of the the transformer's core being so thin and able to saturate. Well, yeah, okay, that's that. What else do you want to cover?
So this is creating atomic hydrogen, correct? Not the HHO mist, or is that
this
the HHO mist?
So his is electrolysis, and it was creating. Stanley Meyer was creating like a water mist with the HHO at the same time. That's what he was trying to do. He wanted to create something that would burn like natural gas, like the same temperature, the same amount of energy, so it could be easily, converted into a vehicle, or like retrofit into any vehicle. Really, that was his whole plan. But by starving the gas, it made it more explosive. So he had to buffer it out somehow, and he claimed that by steam or like vapor, you could like vaporized water, you could dampen that explosion, dampen the heat. In his videos, anyways. Yeah, there's the charging effect right there.
I wonder if that's related to the phenomena in the PAP engine, where as the plasma is being electrically stimulated and expands greatly because of the electromotive potential there and the heating, it actually would cool down more than the amount of heat that it dissipated, because he would dissipate that before the end of the cycle. So it would give it off to the sidewalls, like that's how he was able to build his,
there it is.
His pistons with basically non-high temperature materials, and so with the cylinders as well, the plasma would actually cool down and suck out thermal energy from the environment. So the PAP engine he recorded ran cooler than its surroundings. But it was purely, there's no burnable fuel. It was just nitrogen and a few other gases.
So yeah, this is the patent for the Star Wars tech, he called. This is where he put the magnetized gas, or this is the electrical particle generator. And he put the magnetic gas in, I was telling you earlier, with the argon, nickel, cobalt particles, ions that were pretty much bound to it. But anyways, he would hit it with the photon inside the magnetic tube, and he claimed that every time the light went around, it would make the magnetic field double. Or I shouldn't say double, it would make the magnetic field grow. I can't remember exactly what he said. It's been so long since I've seen that video.
It's funny he just calls it a photon generator.
Yeah. And also, I believe he claimed that the gas didn't move. It was just stationary, and it just did this, which I found odd.
Well, that wouldn't match what we're seeing in the diagram there, where there was clearly vector arrows indicating it's supposed to be floating.
But I did see an accelerator.
Could the arrows
Well, you can
indicate
easily move
excitation?
lightweight particles with a laser. That's well-established stuff. And if they happen to be electrically charged, well, then they can produce a magnetic field that can be picked up by those coils.
Yeah, this is like the parametric generator. Anyways, yeah, sorry. I'm squirreling over here.
Yeah, you sound tired, buddy.
I'm loving it. I like it. I like it.
Well, there's other methods too. Like there's cold discharge in order to create fluids from cherry. This is like from 1910. He was
really
making all types of synthetic gasolines with using cold discharge and high voltage. And he was literally making fluids like that. That's and like if you think about it, like these gases were that they don't bond covalently naturally. They were making them bond. Like it's pretty wild. And I don't know if I should get. I don't know if I can find cherry. Hold on, let me see. Everything's gonna go slow right now. Yeah, there he is. Lewis Cherry. So Lewis Cherry was this old bugger from the 1910s. Oh, it's not going to show it. There it is.
There we go.
Yeah. So let's see if I can make that any bigger. So, oh, shit. So yeah, which is actually this is way better because you can actually get to see the machine. So it shows in the patents you'll see this dial and everything. He's using a lot of high voltage stuff. That looks like low discharge right there. And you see it's just plumbing, right? Like this is all just basic plumbing and high voltage, which is like the best part about it all, because it's so simple.
So what you're saying is it's completely steampunk through and through.
What you're saying is, yeah, absolutely.
Heck yeah.
Well, we haven't even got to steampunk yet. I haven't even got to the space charge propulsion. That's another day. That's for Jeremy.
Indeed, we got to do a full episode with him next week. Going deep
and then
into
we
it
got to
all.
finish up tree power and tree antennas with you.
Yes, 100%. We got it. That will come.
And then you're gonna find out how it all relates, and then how we're gonna use it all to make these craft fly and send them off into space. It's gonna be epic. We're just gonna use nature. We're gonna use what's in front of us.
Exactly, like just imitating nature. It's what it's all about. Well, Commander.
Space charge.
An interdimensional charge.
Let me jump over for just a minute here, and I'll show you guys something here from John Quincy Sinclair. By the way, prefix to this guy, a lot of engineers and physicists hate this guy because his ideas are way out there, and he kind of just doesn't give a damn about combining different areas of physics and bringing all these terms together.
That's what needs to be done.
This thing that we're looking at here is a take right out of his.
And
other
again,
patent.
it's special material.
Yep.
Can we get a mic check real quick? There's some audio issue.
On my end?
I don't know. It just started moments ago.
It could have
There's
been
fuzz.
right
It's been for about 5 minutes.
I'm hearing it now too.
Oh, Anthony, I think it's you. Maybe you have to rejoin, or you didn't close all your tabs, or you have to do the echo cancellation, one or the other. But definitely happens. And yeah, you unmuted Anthony and came right back.
All right, so what we're looking at here, I hope, yeah, my arrow is coming through. This core, this black part underneath, unfortunately, all these images are horribly rasterized. I don't know what the heck the scanners did to them, because you can tell they were higher quality originally. I called the patent office to get this and 2 other of Quincy's patents and asked them if they had a higher resolution scan, but they were pretty repeatedly telling me that this is the best that they have, and they don't necessarily keep paper documents, so they can't get a higher quality image, which really sucks. Anyways, we can see what's going on here. We have a bunch of coils of wire, that's these things here, wrapped around this very thin laminate core. And since he tells us that this is Perm alloy from Magnetics Incorporated, that material has a data sheet and gives you the VH curves and everything. So it's available to do the research on it. And inside, at 1/3 the diameter, we have the second coil. Now these 2 coils, they're wired in series together, but they produce an opposing flux. And when this material saturates and this material saturates, they both produce an emission of a magnetic field that is significantly stronger based on the energy that's left over in the circuit. So we can actually go take a look at some of that stuff too. It's kind of your basic overview where he's showing that there's 2 counter-rotating fluxes on this system. And what he's really trying to get at here with this invention, so now that we know sort of what it looks like, it does this to space-time. It basically creates these series of events, which if we look at this as a time scale from top to bottom, we keep on creating a little pinch in the T field or in time and an inversion of the magnetic flux. So these are happening via the J-curl tensor or mu of space-time and saturating. And the way that he is powering this, it continues to saturate and stack these layers up on each other until a binding force of water that he sends through this internal water injector. And that's, let's get down to that. That's this, well, that's the whole system, actually. This is how you move the water through the system. This is the view of the water injector. And so it charges up the water as it's flowing. It breaks apart in the compressed space-time since the chemical bonds can't hold together for the water molecule. And then if the pinch point is strong enough, he says that the protons themselves actually blow apart and become a bunch of electrons and other waves, and they can be collected by these 2 electrodes here, the differential and released electrons, and then sent back out the circuit. So this device is hard to understand intuitively because it's not MHD in the conventional sense. It's a temporal device. It creates a compression in space-time, but here he's talking about exactly how you end up getting this output for splitting these particles. Now, let me go ahead and stop this share and pick a different screen. Okay, and then I'll present. I gotta give it that checkbox to tell it to stop asking me. And where is it? Hey, my window's gone. That's not cool. Give me just a second to pull this back up. There we go. And John should be able to present that. It's a Mac thing. Mac issue. Wow, never mind. I guess I can't actually share in that method. I have to open a file individually. My apologies. There we go. And let me go ahead and open that file. Now I can share.
So the patent you shared in the private chat is the one to this?
Yeah, this is what Don was posting about. That was called the water energy generator. And so this is my version of it. You can see we've got these. I do the arrows on there just for posterity to kind of let people see what was going on. But these are wound the same way that he instructs spaced windings. I didn't stagger them like he suggests in the magnetic vortex wormhole generator. I kept them fairly even around the core. But the issue that I had is this is a plastic coated wire, and the internal conductors are not thick enough to carry the necessary current in order to fully saturate the iron in this core, which presents a bit of a problem when it comes down to hitting that BH curve transition.
Where's the core?
Actually, the core is wrapped in white tape. You're looking at it underneath these windings.
Oh.
So I can go ahead and I'll open up another one here. This takes me a second because I have to actually switch between individual pictures.
So what is that, like 1/8 of an inch thick or what?
Yeah, almost exactly, in fact.
Yeah, that's really thin.
Any better?
I'll go ahead and change this to the last picture that I'll show you guys. It's got to be a better way to do this. I just haven't learned Streamyard yet. And this is how I kind of mounted it. It's being powered by the driver supply of the Tesla magnifying transmitter that's behind it. So the transmitter in this case is not running. It's just taking the 20,000 volts DC potential and slamming it straight into the coils. And once it gets ramped up, you'll see the effect right here in the center, and you'll get a glowing corona around these coils. And as I said, I'm sure there's a much, much better way to address this. If I could get the right kind of metal, I wouldn't have to pump so much power into it to try and force saturation. But so far, yeah, I just haven't revisited this project. Either way, it was pretty freaking neat, and I've got some interesting phenomena out of it. It just didn't perform to the level that I was really hoping for.
What's the right kind of metal?
The right kind of metal is one with an extremely sharp transition in the BH curve and a wide hysteresis. Are you familiar with, I guess I should probably explain what a BH curve is. Okay, so if you magnetize a piece of iron and you take the magnet away from it, the iron will stay magnetized. When you try to flip your permanent magnet and bring it close to the iron again, the magnet's going to have to get a lot closer to the iron than it did the first time to magnetize it, because it's already magnetized in the opposite direction. And the domains don't like to just simply flip. It will take them a period of time to transition their flips between domains until that field penetrates all the way through the permeability of the core. And so they call that the hysteresis curve, or how much energy it takes to saturate the core and magnetize it at 100% as much as it's going to be able to be magnetized, and then how much power it takes to push it back in the opposite direction and demagnetize it in the reverse polarity. So you want a material that when it takes that transition, it doesn't do it slowly, as in it doesn't magnetize slowly. It's like, it's not magnetic yet, it's not magnetized yet, and all of a sudden, boom, now it is.
Yeah.
So some materials respond very non-linearly like that.
The first version, the analogy that I learned to explain this initially was with cooking and heat, BTUs of heat. Aluminum will heat and cool quickly, whereas ceramic will heat and cool so slowly. And so this is the first explanation for the curve that I'd ever heard. And some metals will make that transition quickly, and some take forever.
Yeah, some are actually really amazing when they transition, especially your ferromagnetics. You give a certain material with the right mixture, a magnetic flux, which polarizes it, stresses it. It's like kind of like a piezoelectric, but with ferrous materials, and it will release the polarized energy, the extra restrictions in its Brownian motion as thermal output, so it'll get hot under the magnetic field. And if you extract that heat, then it'll get cold as it's leaving the magnetic field. And so these were researched a number of years ago for their potential use in air conditioning and heating units, but the materials were so exotic and expensive that it was just never industrially viable.
Hey, how are you driving the coils? Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, continue.
Well, that was pretty much it. I mean, we covered the major part of that particular patent. It goes way deeper with Quincy. I mean, he's got his own ideas on hyperspace and the velocity of light and how to screw with space-time. It gets really interesting, but there's a lot of real meat and potatoes there. It's just that people don't generally spend the time looking at it because it's not written in a very conventional sense, and it's also super complicated.
Could you talk more about that? About how warping is space-time?
If you want.
Yes.
Yeah, so the fabric of space-time, if you want to call it that, the cosmic lattice, the aether, known by many names, it's variable. That's why physics has variables to describe its properties.
Mm-hmm.
And the two most important ones that we care about in electrodynamics is the permeativity and permeability. That means those two things are basically a saturable variable that we can use electric charge or magnetic flux to add energy into. And that energy is actually stored in the vacuum refractive index itself. It's not stored inside the materials. So when you add energy into a volume of space, the extra added energy has an equivalent mass. This is your basic relativity mass energy equivalency. And because that energy is constantly in motion, you have to sustain a standing wave in that space so you can accumulate a virtual mass, or basically with very high Q factor, store a very large amount of magnetic or electric flux, or both at once, preferably, in a fixed volume of space. What that does to that space is slow down the speed of light there, because the speed of light relies on the ground state of the refractive index to travel at a fixed velocity, and it operates through changes in permeability and permeativity, or epsilon and mu, of that space-time. So yes, when we stress those two things, they can only bend so much. It's a nonlinear curve. And even though physics treats it as a fairly linear curve, particle accelerator labs will already be fully aware of this and have compensation methods to deal with the fact that it's not linear. We can basically push it to a point where it breaks. And that point where it breaks is called the Schwinger limit. It physically starts to break down into real particles, positrons and electrons. In pairs, they shoot off from each other at 180 degrees apart. And I've mentioned this many times. It takes the equivalent of 1,022 kiloelectron volts to break them apart. But more importantly, the fact that the fabric will bend and distort, it'll shrink or grow or twist in that time. Thinking about space, this malleable thing that you can grab hold of with electromagnetic fields, is the real key here. And so when we're talking about warping space-time, that's really what we're talking about, is using electric and magnetic fields to modify the refractive index in a specific direction, at a specific amplitude or way that we want to do it.
So, something I want to quickly share here, I didn't realize, this thing runs off 110.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's converted, but I mean, like, still, it's taking everything. It's running this off 110 and converted, obviously, into high voltage, high tension.
Really?
Yeah.
It's quite the step up. No?
Is that diagram from a patent?
Yeah, this is Cherry from 1910. This is for like synthetic gasoline patent. So this, yeah,
synthetic gasoline.
Yeah, synthetic gasoline. That's what I was trying to tell you earlier. You can covalently bond, unlike atoms, to make fluids. So this might not even just make gasoline. This could make other types of fluids and chemicals for resins and stuff like that.
I was just about to ask, is this similar to like the Joe cell technology and how it transmutes different fluids?
Well, by the looks of it, it's using a coil, a transformer, air coil by the look of it there. And it's, the positive's obviously going up here to there. The negative's going there. You can see that the rod is coming down. It's coming out here. You can see that J is right here. I'm saying, right?
Oh, yeah.
I think that's what's going on.
I'm definitely going to need to take a look at this a little bit more in depth after it. I'm seeing a lot of similarities, actually, in it compared to the Joe cell designs. They've always fascinated me.
Yeah.
Can you put the link in comments? I mean, the patent link in the comments?
So a quick question, and this is for everyone. What about the surrounding structures being made of stone?
In regards to running the machines, or
in regards to the actual structure of the machine, let's say in any given diagram, this pipe with the U-bend in here, what do you think about, because
that
I always
could
have
be the missing link between them, the technology working and not working.
Well, you can have a chance in purity of rock. You can have geographical specificity when it comes to mining and quarry work, but also the particularity of stone choice in any given structure. Now, I've been specifically interested in basalt, basaltic fiber weave, basaltic tubing, actual rock, because we've been using iron up until the 1850s, when that seemed to have been largely phased out in many areas in favor of other metals. But iron and things like pig iron have specific properties that don't exist in today's current industry to a large extent. However, within the past 30 years, we have begun using stone again. And I can actually give me a minute and I will find the links to the sites that literally they build sewage pipes, they build conducting pipes. They actually can weave and thread fabric made of basalt, pure basalt. And I wonder as to the viability of its use in structural builds like this, and the historical link.
You're bang on, I believe.
That's perfect. Yeah, it's perfect.
Geopolymer.
Exactly, the geopolymer technologies, and that's like geopolymer is a very it's used a lot more broadly than it should be, because it's also there's I always get the name wrong. It's like the granite or basalt style of geopolymer. And then, sorry, brain farts. But the different types of chemical compounds and crystals that form with these different mixtures of what we call geopolymer, and the chemical reaction that then forms with them, and the structures, and that especially Bob Greenyer's style, this wind hex technology of not even needing electricity to break down the covalent bonds of the bedrock, natural rock or whatnot, and then turn it into the powder. And then with that, add in all of these extra nanotechnologies and what we're now learning as these superconducting metamaterials and nanotechnology in the material science sense of it, and that the ancients then understood it more and utilized it and advanced it in their technology understanding, and also building architecture. That what Amura brought up of is that the missing piece, essentially, or how much does it affect those designs of the pipes and everything else around it, that 100% that's most likely the critical piece that we hadn't yet connected, and especially haven't connected in our advanced material science technology and designs and engineering of today.
Oh, certainly. And now we've you can look at Drum, Drumm, for his theories on the chemistry side and the chemical separation facets of all of Egypt. But he brought this to mind when he talked about the red granite used in the Red Pyramid, the conductivity of specific rocks and the chemical interaction, the chemical seepage. Now, when you're talking about building structures that may or may not last, a simple change in electrolysis of water through a structure will determine whether that structure endures chemical leaching or remains intact. Now you can stretch this from a 6-day period to a 6-year period and see quite a big difference. In America, we have a huge issue with chemical leaching, largely due to the electrolysis of water and things like sulfur hexafluorine. But all of our lead and iron piping is so degraded. And I believe this is largely due to the electrolysis of water. I used to think it was just the passage of water through metal, but it doesn't work like that. It has to do with what is water? Water is initially an electric dipole. And so when you change that, you change what it does to its surroundings. And so I wonder if things like I just shared basalt-fabric.com. They make basaltic weaves. They are extremely heat resistant. Their conductivity is static thanks to their build. You can buy different builds. You can buy different weaves. But the simple thing is degradation due to ionic charge is not the same as metal, steel, galvanized steel, iron, pig iron, aluminum, copper-coated aluminum, brass, anything. It's completely different, and it's the closest thing to the old world that we have, and we got it from the old world.
Interesting.
Big silence. What do you guys think?
No, I mean, that's the issue with, I mean, I was earlier looking at a picture, for instance, of this fabric that you can wear that makes a picture impossible to take of you because it reflects in such a way. And it was also making me think about the same idea. Like, how do you control, like the way when we look at light, you can not see the difference in gray, even though it's, if you were to have a machine, it can see like there's a very subtle difference between things. So I also wonder about the same, like when resonance is produced from crystalline and it grows, right? So we've talked about crystal growing for energy, but even in terms of growing like the brick, like setting up iron in the brick for quartz, you know, what kind of energy does that produce that can then be used by some of these machines the same way we've talked about ionic lifters using cell phone towers. So if there's a large enough system around star forts made of brick, and, you know, 13th Monkey always talked about liquid mercury involved with the bricks, or the star forts had, you know, liquid mercury flowing through where these,
the tunnels or the
the sewer systems, right? Whatever they're called, the aqueducts and
aquifers, aqueducts, yeah.
Right. So there's, I mean, I think it's, there's a lot to say about that. I think it's a path to go down tomorrow for sure.
Well, everything has a field, and each field interrupts and interacts. And so if you can control that interaction by knowing your surroundings, I mean, that's the basis.
Is the basalt a metal?
Basalt is a mineral. It's
rock.
Crystal stone. Yeah, rock.
Mm-hmm.
It's
naturally
like
occurring.
8.5 or 8 on the most hardness scale, but it chunks or shatters how it the cleavage of it pretty easily, I believe.
Hey.
Also,
basalt, like copper or something, or brass or something.
Basalt has a Curie point that makes it specifically useful from an electric standpoint. And not only this, but the degradation of basalt is almost non-existent. The monks that repair regularly, the 24 witnesses, which are 24 large Buddhist statues, they're roughly 2 stories high apiece. Since their initial creation, they have been repaired using a rebar structure. And the only reason they have to be repaired, which means they heat basalt and re-pour it, the only reason they have to repair it is because the rebar inside oxidizes and rots the basalt. If they had managed to do it without the basalt or without the rebar skeleton, there would be no degradation to it.
Right.
So from a chemical standpoint, it's super stable.
Could you explain what basalt is for someone who, like me, who doesn't?
I'll find some pictures of it.
So basalt is a mafic rock. Think of it kind of like a lava rock. highly oxygenated,
Yeah, they do
naturally
claim
occurring. It's one of the easiest things to melt and forge and form. And so you find a lot of early structures, early porn structures, sorry. But you find a lot of early poured structures being basalt.
Yeah, basalt has a very different type of property than glass because of glass's silicon content. It's thick even when it's extremely hot. And basalt, without its silicon content, that's actually what makes it much different than, say, granite or other types of rock. It flows extremely easily at above its melting point, so it will take the form of a cast that you pour it into. And for that reason, it's easy to be
igneous. So they
Is it
claim that it comes from volcanoes. Sorry to interrupt.
So you see high basaltic rock in thinner pores, like Stromboli. Strombolian eruptions are named after Stromboli itself, but the thinner stuff, whereas you would see thicker rock being more mafic rock.
Yeah, and if there was any question about basalt's crystalline nature, all we have to do is take a look at this stuff called columnar basalt. And you'll see that it naturally breaks apart due to thermal variations from surface heating right down along its grain axes into fairly symmetrical hexagons. They're not perfectly even hexagons, but per the mass of each one that breaks off, they tend to be roughly around the same size. They have similar angles to them, so it's pretty shocking to see how this stuff crystallizes up and then shears along these grain axes as it contracts.
And what's the deal with mafic rock again? Nathan, you were bringing up mafic rock, You
have different types of rock. Mafic rock is more an agglomeration.
Yes, like was there something like mafic rock and like felsic rock or something?
I would have to look it up. This is more Mike's forte.
Right.
The 13th Monkey is actually a rock collector. He has some of the most radiation hazardous rocks in the world in his house. When it comes to using electricity and magnetism to shape rock, basalt is also uniquely perfect for such a thing. When you heat it beyond the Curie point, you can actually influence the shape of it as it cools without touching it.
According to this, it says widely accepted silica content classification scheme: rocks with more than 65% silica are called felsic. Those between 55
you're not sharing.
are intermediate.
Xirtus, we can't see what you're reading if you're trying to share it. Sorry to interrupt, but please continue.
Oh yeah, it's me, Andreas. Hold on, I'll present just for a second. It wasn't a big deal. I was just showing
the
map.
You're giving the definition of it, and if you got a picture too, please.
Well, so mafic versus felsic has to do with 65% or more is felsic. If it has silica 65% or more, it's felsic. And 55 to 65 silica are intermediate. Those between 45 and 55 are mafic. And then less than that, less than 45% is ultra mafic. So it's on the spectrum of silica. If it's more silica, it's more felsic. If it's less silica, it's more mafic.
I put a link for basalt under the microscope. It's kind of interesting.
Basalt is also quite magnetic compared to other rocks. I've got a few pieces sitting here and a selection of rocks I just grabbed off, basically the railroad tracks. And no problem picking up those chunks of basalt.
Pretty fascinating under the microscope there. It almost looks like bismuth a bit or different.
Yeah, I was expecting a really organized pattern.
Structure, right? Yeah, because usually it's in the hexagonal crystallization of how it forms.
Well, here you see its permeability because it doesn't necessarily have a structure of its own.
Yeah, right? Fair. And a lot of the artificial man-made islands like of the ancient megalithic are made out of basalt as well, and some of the pyramids too in Indonesia are all the basalt columns. Nan Madol especially is all basaltic rock.
Well, that is strange actually, because the basalt there should be different, because throughout Indonesia you see their volcanoes, specifically one where the lava is blue, and it's because the rock in that area has such a high sulfur content. It's actually a different kind of rock because of it.
Even under electron microscope, it just looks completely amorphous.
But it's not a dead rock, which is insane, because you look at there's a biblical description of what heaven is made of, and they go to the different precious stones, and when you go under a microscope, all the stones they describe look as basalt, though arranged in a line differently, and rocks like diamonds just show up as black. They're dead rocks. So I mean, basalt is a part of that.
So here I've got a piece of basalt and a magnet on the end of a rod, and we can see that it sticks straight away to it. And
Yeah,
it's,
magnetic.
I can move it around pretty good. It's not easily falling off. It's fairly magnetic. You could easily wrap 2 coils around this and treat this as a transformer core or as an inductor, no problem. And interestingly, it will ring acoustically, so that's magnetoacoustics when you do induce those fields. That's also another added benefit. Something like a piece of rough quartz, nothing. We've got some other types of granite. They are not attracted very much. This is just mildly paramagnetic, but nothing like the basalt. And here we have kind of a mixture. This one does have some sulfur in it. If I were to clean off the dirt, you'd be able to see that it was blue. It's just mildly paramagnetic. And my guess is whatever magnetic properties it has is probably due to the iron content. But, yeah, there's no way to tell that it's bluish in color compared to everything. My lighting is garbage.
So to find a man with a forge who can heat and mix basalt and olivine, we might have a perfect core.
I'd love to make a transformer out of basalt. I never even thought about doing it until really this conversation, and now I'm like, oh, now I have.
That's a great idea.
Oh, you've got to let me know if you try. I would love to see it.
Yeah, that'll be a fun one for another stream. But I'll have to make sure you're there. There we go. Go ahead.
There, I jumped for door. I couldn't manage any of these.
Between 1,000 and 1,200 melting point.
Oh no, my internet.
Yeah, so I think we're all kind of running out of steam here, and 111 watching as I say that. I was up early all day, actually working hard labor. Sean, were you wanting to say something before? Or
No. If you want to wrap it up, we can wrap it up. Plenty, there's tons of covers. So if you, there's we could always cover it any time, right?
Exactly. But yeah, so we'll save it for the next one, and because we did do 45 minutes of another one, which God knows how much of it actually might have even made it, and how much was just the frozen ridiculousness. So on that note, we will do this again, and maybe even tomorrow, but fairly soon. Love you all, and have a good day. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks, Bernie.
Peace.
Much love.
The resonant frequency of the Earth is 432 hertz, and all music was written and played in 432, but it was changed in World War II by Himmler, I believe. It was behind it, and they changed it all to 440. So it's not in tune.
That's right. Yes.
With us and with nature and the Earth and all that. It's out of tune now.
And so the picture I have up right now is one of Walter Russell's.
and it's showing the octave scale and how the octave scale goes through chemistry creation, through geometry, through sound, through light, and through color.
But I mean, it's always been one of those things I've never really focused on whenever I tried learning piano, like the black keys, why are they there? When you play them, they just seem like, they just make you feel a certain way instantaneously. It's like a lot of things. It just, that kind of connection, that kind of vibe or whatever it projects, that you get it immediately in that speed.
With the black keys, it sounds like it's the ether more, it's a background subconscious sound or frequency, like to do with dreams and, the other realms, which is interesting because when you listen to music today, especially, like the pop music, it's got a very heavy backbeat, right? We put you in a certain state where you're accepting with the backbeat, and then they sing all their lyrics into your mind, which is how they program you.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Ooh, so that's like if you're resonating with the right harmony, you're getting like up in consciousness or in dreamland. If you're resonating with the dark hole, you're getting sucked back down to like the upside down. No, thank you, Stranger Things.
If I'm doing certain sounds, sometimes like if I'm doing like breathing sounds or sounds with my throat, it depends. Like, but some of those frequencies do calm me down. And, a lot of those frequencies can be used to trigger people to feel, anxiety as well. And I think that happens a lot. And it's open to conspiracy and to interpretation on how people use those frequencies to really put people at a state of vulnerability. Because music's very powerful in that kind of way that can, shape even the most strongest of minds.
Yeah, it's subliminal. And also, it's the way I see it too is it's been used all throughout history. If you even goes back to the biblical times, when they crumbled the walls of Jericho, they used a certain tone and frequency as trumpets. a weapon, right? And we're doing it again today. We're coming up with ultrasonic weapons.